If I had to start songwriting again in 2026, knowing everything I know now, I would almost do everything differently. It's not because songwriting has changed, but most songwriters are learning the hard way. Writing random lyrics, waiting for inspiration, and hoping that just one song works. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I would learn songwriting today, having done this for over 12 years and having mentored over 3,500 songwriters just like you. We're going to go step by step so that you can write songs faster, eliminate writer's block, and stop guessing your way through songs. This is the framework I wish I had when I started. Hey, Danny here, founder of Songwriters International. Welcome to the channel if you're new. We help songwriters develop their craft by sharing tips, tricks, and techniques on all things songwriting so that you can go and write your best possible songs. Alright, let's jump on into this. So what we need to first of all understand is why most songwriters get stuck, so that we can actually eliminate those problems through the process that I'm going to share with you. Now, most songwriters don't fail because they're untalented. They fail because they skip context. They'll often go to a piano or they'll start on a guitar and they'll just say, what should I write today? What chords should I put together? What am I trying to do? And that question alone, that question where you're saying, what should I write today, causes you to overthink. It causes half-finished songs, repeating similar ideas, and ultimately burning out in the process. If you don't know where that song is going, then you don't know where to go next. So here's the simple fix. And this is called phase 1, and it's in the pre-write, or as I call it, the PPS system. Now this phase alone will separate you from 90% of songwriters. So let's break this down into step 1 of phase 1. And this is the idea. Now I'm not looking for a masterpiece, but I am looking for a spark. Now those sparks or ideas can come from quotes, horse names, 6-word stories, conversations that you have with other people. Now the idea itself doesn't necessarily have to be good, but it needs to ignite something within you and create that excitement for you to actually want to start the songwriting process. Think of it a little bit like lighting a fire. If you were to light a fire with a match, that's all you're doing is striking the match and creating that initial spark, that initial flame that then feeds the rest of that fire. And that's what we're doing here. We're striking that match and we're starting that process. Now let's go into step 2 of phase 1, and this is what we call the planning stage. Now this is where everything changes. This is where we take that idea, that concept, and we ask ourselves this very important question. What is the point of this song? Or an alternative way of asking this is, what do you want the listener to think, feel, or understand by the time that they've reached the end of the song? You're going to write that down, and this becomes your anchor point throughout the songwriting process. So when you're in verse 2 or you're at the bridge, you can keep referring back to this plan that you've created to make sure that you're on track. Once we've identified the bigger picture of the song, what it's all about, then we break this into portions. A little bit like you would do if you were eating a cake. A cake is a whole. It's all on its own, and then you cut it up into pieces and individually serve it to people. That's what we're doing with the song. The whole piece of the cake is the point of the song. Now we're going to dissect that into sections. What does verse 1 say? What's going to change in the pre-chorus? What emotional release happens in the chorus? What's going to evolve into verse 2? You're not writing lyrics yet, but you are getting clear on the story so that you can write later on with intent. And then finally into step 3 of phase 1, and that is the songwriting stage. The beautiful thing about this is you're not guessing your way through the process. You're not picking up a guitar saying, what should I write today? You are following a map that you've literally written out for yourself. This alone is going to eliminate writer's block, confusion, half-written songs, feeling like your songs are either repeating themselves or not actually good enough. Because you know exactly when that song is due to turn in its story, and you know exactly why. Now only when this process is done, phase 1, the planning, preparation and songwriting stage, can we go into the process of actually crafting the lyric. That brings us nice into phase 2, which is the lyrics. Now let's make things really simple for a second. Lyrics are the story of your song. You want a story, you're going to use your lyrics. And your job as a songwriter is to make the listener see what you're trying to tell them. Create visuals, create pictures so that they can follow you through that journey. I always write a super simple draft lyric first. I get my ideas out of my head and put them just onto paper in a really simple way. And I've put together an example here of how it would look. So here's a simple first draft. I don't know what to do. Should I be trying to get you back, or should I let you go? Now, the truth is that's not amazing. But what it does do, it gets my ideas out of my head onto paper and starts to move the song forwards. From here, we can start to build that imagery that we want in the lyric. So the next version of that lyric would look something like this. Coffee cold in the place we called home. My mind's running wild. second guessing the decisions we made. Now you can see already it starts to expand a little bit more. It starts to create a little bit more of imagery, and it starts to entice that listener in a little bit more. Simple concept that I run with is this: draft, refine, upgrade. And that is what we've just done in that example. Now, just super quickly, I've opened up some spaces for songwriters to work personally with me on a one-to-one basis. If you want help applying these skills into your songwriting, specifically with support and guidance and mentorship, then below in the description or in the comments, you will see a link. Hit that link, head on over to the next page, book a call with me personally, and we can see where you're at with your songwriting, where you want to go, and what are some of those obstacles that are stopping you from moving forwards, and let me see if I can help you implement this into your songwriting. Alright, back into this. Now I want to share with you 3 lyrical tips that have transformed my lyrics and also my stories that I really think are going to help you. Tip number 1 is that the opening line of your lyric in verse 1 is arguably one of the most important parts of your song, and is oftentimes actually overlooked, because this is the first impression that you give to the listener. The same way when you meet somebody that you've never met, there's that first impression, and it's the same with a song. So we want to try and create as much as an impact as possible. So instead of basic lines like, "I've always loved you," try something that actually creates curiosity. So instead of "I've always loved you," we could say, "I feel like a record player with the same vinyl stuck on repeat." It still means I've always loved you, with the same feelings, with the same emotions, but it pulls the listener in. Tip 2 is what I call beneath the surface level lyric writing versus surface level lyric writing. This is a simple concept, but arguably is one of the most important. Now, the best way for me to explain this to you is just to give you some examples. So here is an example of a surface level lyric, and it's "I want to hold your hand." It's super simple, doesn't really say much, but it does say what we need to say. Now, a beneath the surface level lyric of that exact same lyric would be "lock your fingertips into mine." Now hopefully you can see just from there how one is super simple and one has gone a little layer deeper to try and create a little bit more of imagery, a little bit more feeling, a little bit of that idea of locking your fingertips into mine. And these work really well for verses. Verses are where we're going to set the scene. That's where we're going to use our beneath the surface level lyrics. That's where we're going to dig a little bit more. And then the chorus typically is where we're going to actually go a bit simpler. We're going to go surface level, and we're just going to create that sing-along energy that a chorus is designed to have. Finally, my tip 3 when it comes to lyric is use your plan. I know it might sound crazy, but it's often overlooked. People will create the plan, but then go off track, go somewhere else, and then start writing what they want and get stuck in the same habits. You need to follow that plan like you're following a map in a car. Follow it. What is it saying? What am I saying in verse 1? You've written it out, now you're going to go and say it. What do you want to say in the chorus? You've already told yourself, go and say it. Now, yes, you can go a little bit off, but at some point, always come back and try and get yourself on track. You don't want to be going too far off the plan that you've created and the map that you have. It's there to make your songwriting and your journey easier and not to leave you stuck like you would be if you were just freeballing the song. And now that we've covered the planning and the preparation and songwriting, we've dived into the lyrics, which would be the next stage in the process that I would suggest that you follow. The next step from here is phase 3, and that's what we call melody. Now I want to share with you something quickly what took me 3 years to really understand the concept of, is that melody is the hook of your songs. If you want a hook in your song, the only way we can do that is through the melody. Everybody's heard those phrases of hookiness, catchy, repetitive, all of those things. It comes from the melody, not lyrics alone or anything else. So when you're writing the melody, I really want you to think about that you're writing the hook. You're writing that part of the song that people in stadiums, in arenas, are going to be singing back. That's what you're doing when you create the melody. Now, the great thing about melody is that there's only fundamentally 3 movements that you can use as a songwriter. We have static, we have conjunct, and then we have disjunct. We're going to go through those just now as well. So first of all, we're going to go through static. Now, static melodies are great for verses traditionally. They are a melody that is designed to not move very much. They typically stay on the same note. Okay, you're going to see this from the example, and they're great for storytelling lyrics. So it would look something like this. 1, 2, 3. I don't know why I'm falling now. Take me away. We're just staying on that same note. I feel like I am on the same note. I'm not singing anything. And then we can drive the song forwards. You can do that in lots of variants. You can slow it down, you can speed it up, you can have more space in between each word. Totally up to you. But fundamentally, the idea of a static melody, it stays on the same note. Now let's go on into conjunct. Now conjunct is very similar to a static. Again, it's going to stay on the same notes fundamentally, but it's going to have small movements. It's going to have small movements in the notes that you use. So it would sound something like this. 1, 2, 3. I don't feel like I'm falling down, and no, I feel like I'm gone, but don't take me, don't, and I can feel like I can know. You see those little small movements of the I don't feel like falling down, I'm up. Those little movements are what we call conjunct melodies. They're not massive movements, but they are small, subtle changes that contrast between a static and a conjunct melody. And then finally we have the main one, which is called disjunct, or in other words, it's also called spikes, because it is trying to replicate a spiked melody, like I do with my finger here, moving up and down, a little bit like a mountain. And with a disjunct melody, you're trying to reach the mountain, then you're pulling it back down, you're going up again and pulling it down. The difference between this melody and a static or conjunct is the amount of movement that it has between notes. So it'll go from one note and it will massively contrast. So it sounds something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey! I feel like I don't pick about a why. I've been looking for the don't know why. Take me by the hand to feel like I can pick your problem. You can hear the amount of movement that's in a disjunct melody. And if you put those together, you start to create something that is incredibly powerful. I can give you an example of this in the context of a song. So we're going to start with a static, we're going to have a little bit of movement to a conjunct, then we're going to go into a disjunct melody, and I'm going to walk you through and tell you what each melody is as we do it. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't feel like falling down, I don't know why. So we're in the static melody. I can't let I don't feel like I'm gonna now let's go conjunct. Cause I can't feel like I don't feel like falling down. I now disjunct. 1, 2, 3. So hey, don't you gon' be my lover, man, and I can't feel like I don't even try, cause and then you could go then back into your static melody. This is how you create songs with contrast. This is how you create hooks. This is how you create engagement through your songs. It's by having contrast between the sections. You having a static verse, a conjunct chorus, or whatever way you want to package it up, as long as you have different melodies in different sections of the song. Now also, just so that you know, you can create hooks not just with the vocal, but as I'm sure you can imagine, you can do it with a piano, you can do it with a guitar, a saxophone, a flute, whatever instrument you decide to choose. But 9 times out of 10, it's very common for people to use the vocal because it's very easy to hear. But with instrumental pieces, artists like Avicii, with a famous song called Levels, he was just an instrumentalist at the time in terms of being a producer, but he creates the hook with the instrumental, with the synth. You can look across an array of pieces of music, whether it's dance music, electronic music, rock music, whatever it may be, and you don't just have to use the vocal in order to create hooks. Now there's the other side of songwriting that you may be considering, and you might be saying, well Danny, what about rhyme? What about chord progressions? What about structure of your song? What about post-production? But if I was to start again in 2026, the areas of songwriting that I would be wanting to master like a pro would be, first of all, the planning and preparation stage. The next stage would be lyrics, and the next stage would be melody, because they are the three backbones of a great song. They are the foundations that everything else is therefore then built from. Songwriting doesn't need to be complicated, but it does need to be intentional. It cannot be the process where you're just picking up guitars, going to production, and just ultimately hoping for the best, because that's where songwriters get stuck. And I know that because I've been that songwriter. I've also seen it thousands of times with the songwriters that I've actually mentored. So now you know my process of how I would go about actually implementing a process into my songwriting for 2026 if I wasn't already using it. I've put together another video which is my complete songwriting process, which is how I use these 3 steps, but also then how I go on and actually build the song from start to finish. So if you want to watch that, then you can do it somewhere around here. Click that video and go and watch me implement this in actual practice. As I mentioned before, if you want to book a call which is one-to-one where we can personally implement this into your songwriting, have me coach and train you through that process, then you can book a call in the description below or in the comments. You'll see a link. Hit that link, head on over, and I would absolutely love to speak with you and see how we can help. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you for more videos on songwriting.